Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. That musical intro was Realism Stealth Warrior with a tune called Pseudo African Rednecks. I'm trying my hand at some editing to spice up the podcast here, using some African sounds, and later we will use hi-fi African drums by Cyberdread to transition through the sections. We recently finished a series previewing African Cup 2023 qualification, where we went group by group. That series featured a deep dive into the African Cup qualifying history of each team. That was not for the faint of heart. African soccer teams have the longest history of all world teams, not because they've been around the longest, but because their regional competition, the African Cup of Nations, takes place every 2 years and has done since 1957. So it was a pretty deep dive into their history, and we realized that that's not for everyone. Not everyone will be interested in that, but more people will be interested in what's happening currently in the African Cup. And it is interesting with the African Cup 2023 qualification already started, and some of the usual surprises that come with African soccer already on offer there. So if you're interested in the deep dives, please visit our website at soccerfiles.captivate.fm. That's soccerfiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. Or you can just type Soccer Files Canada into Google and we'll come up. For this series of 4 podcasts, we have compiled the last sections of these podcasts: the comparison of FIFA and ELO rankings, the head-to-head comparison, a discussion analyzing the prospects of each team, and our prediction of how the group is going to turn out. And then, kind of interestingly, it finishes with specific predictions on the 2 sets of games that have already been played, those games in June 2022, to see how each group is progressing so far. So we kind of kept ourselves in the dark in preparation for that. This podcast is the last of 4 in the series and deals with groups K, J, and L. And Group J is Tunisia, Equatorial Guinea, Libya, and Botswana. Group K contains Morocco, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Liberia. And Group L with Senegal, Benin, Mozambique, and Rwanda. Group J, Tunisia, Equatorial Guinea, Libya, Botswana. Part 3 of the podcast, a kind of a comparison of teams and a look at how they're going to do and how they have done in this campaign so far. So we begin with the FIFA and the ELO rankings. You want to take us through that, Kiara?
Sure. Yeah, so Tunisia is our pot 1 team, and they are ranked 30th by FIFA and 45th by ELO.
Right, and in ELO rankings, they sunk as low as 80th in 2013. And they're quite different than the FIFA rankings. When they were 80th in the ELO rankings, they were 48th in FIFA rankings, which is not so bad. And they jumped up to somewhere around 20th in both 2014 and 2018. FIFA rankings are kind of erratic, and honestly, I think they seem to be overrating them here too. Okay, Equatorial Guinea.
So being the pot 2 team, they are ranked 99th by FIFA and 95th by ELO.
That's right, and that's a big improvement. They have risen kind of steadily over the years. In 2006, they were 162nd in ELO, and kind of like we said with Tunisia, they've kind of been all over the place in the FIFA rankings, rising as high as 50 in 2015 when they hosted, but honestly, they're not quite there. So these rankings seem fairly accurate. Moving on to Libya.
Yeah, Libya, coming from pot 3, are ranked 118th by FIFA and 117th by ELO.
All right. Well, that is almost an all-time low for Libya, and they really should be a better team than that. But they haven't been a better team since around for the last 10 years, I would say. In June 2012, they were 66th in ELO rankings and 42nd in FIFA rankings. So really, kind of at a low point of their career with a long, weak period for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's go to Botswana.
So Botswana is coming from pot 4, and they're ranked 148th by FIFA and 134th by ELO.
Right, and they reached a high of around 100 in 2012. I guess that was because of that really good campaign there, but they've rarely broken 100 even during that good period. All right, let's take a look at the head-to-head records. So we'll begin with Tunisia and Equatorial Guinea. How do they compare?
Yeah, so Tunisia has the winning record with 4 wins, 1 tie, and 2 losses.
Yeah, and all of those games are actually current since 2014. And in the last 2 campaigns they've met, 2021 African Cup qualifying and 2022 World Cup qualifying, and Tunisia has won 3 out of the 4 meetings there. Next.
So Tunisia versus Libya. Tunisia also has the winning record with 5 wins, 1 tie, and 3 losses.
Right, and a lot of those games were in the past and probably not relevant anymore, but they've met 4 times. Again, in 2018, I don't know if you noticed, Kiera, but in 2021 African Cup qualifying, 3 of these teams were in the same group. It was Tunisia, Equatorial Guinea, and Libya.
Mm-hmm.
So they've met, Tunisia and Libya have 3 times since, in 2 campaigns since 2018, and Tunisia won 3 and tied 1 in recent times.
So the next matchup is Tunisia and Botswana, and the record here is 3 wins, 1 tie, and 2 losses.
Yeah, and actually, Botswana, we saw they harrowed Tunisia in 2012, and then tied them in 2015. But and that might factor in here. Maybe they're a bit of a bogey team for Tunisia. But having said that, Tunisia still has the winning record, and the 2 haven't met since 2015.
Yeah. Next is Equatorial Guinea and Libya, with Equatorial Guinea having the winning record of 3 wins, no ties, and no losses.
Right, and they were in a group in 2021, and Equatorial Guinea won both legs there.
Yeah. Equatorial Guinea versus Botswana. We have no record because they haven't played each other in major competition.
That's right. And 1 more to go.
Yeah, last but not least is Libya versus Botswana, where Libya has 1 win, 1 tie, and no losses.
Right, and that was in 2004, so not particularly relevant. Now, let's get on with the discussion about how we think things are going to go here. And you have kind of some opening comments or overview?
Yeah, I think this should be a fairly easy group for Tunisia. They're in a good period of consistency, and is what's needed here, with no top teams to contend with. Equatorial Guinea could challenge them at the game level, but are less likely to do so at the campaign level. The form they bring in should be enough to advance, as neither are threatened much from below. Libya's been in poor form for a while, and Botswana is generally a weak team anyways, and they're also on a bit of a downswing in form. Both have had campaigns that could challenge at the top, but they've been rare enough that it doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, that's right. And to go into a bit more detail, Tunisia, they weren't troubled by Equatorial Guinea when they were grouped with them in 2021. And they are 50 to 60 points ahead in the rankings. So Equatorial Guinea can be a tricky team. Iban Salvador, the trickiest member of that tricky team. And they did beat Tunisia in one of their 4 recent meetings. And they also actually won in the quarterfinals of the 2015 African Cup, where they hosted. They won that in extra time. But Tunisia has won 3 of their 4 recent meetings, and the loss in 2021 didn't affect Tunisia's campaign overall. Equatorial Guinea themselves are about 20 points ahead of Libya in the rankings, replicating the home form there and in 2022 World Cup campaign, may be enough to see them into the second round, even if they're not at their best. They should take second, but their away form is really the key. They were weak before their 2 good recent campaigns, and it's questionable. We saw that they rose up from being a pot 4 team to a pot 2 team, meaning the seeding. So it's a fairly recent improvement, and they would need to kind of maintain that. Okay, Libya, honestly, Kiera, to me, Libya always feels like a bit of a black box. I never find it easy to put a finger on them. Their campaigns range from good challenging campaigns to weak campaigns, but for a long time now they've been mostly on the weekend, on the weak side of that since 2014. Consistent 3rd place finishes and then 4th place in 2021. I wonder if they'll kind of wake up from their torpor, but I wouldn't predict that. A 3rd place finish, perhaps even battling to avoid last place, seems like the only sensible prediction. Mm-hmm. They're actually 20 to 30 points ahead of Botswana in the rankings. And Botswana, when they have a shockingly strong campaign like they did in 2012, you're always wondering if they can kind of do it again. Yeah. You know, I don't think they'll actually do it again and dominate this group that they did. But it is kind of fun that Tunisia is in the group, and they kind of harrowed them that time. So it's a bit of a bogey team for Tunisia, and they're always good for a few points in their campaign. So that did turn out to be a flash in the pan for Botswana, and they've been a declining kind of middling team, recently even a weak team, but who knows, the worm could turn. I don't know what that expression actually means, the worm turning, but they could come forth with a great campaign. It's always a possibility. So overall, I think Libya and Botswana will take some points at home, but I don't think they'll threaten the top 2. Do you have a prediction for this group?
Yeah,
I'm tired of your indecision, Kiera. Give it to me straight.
Okay, here's what I think, and I don't think it's going to be a big surprise. Tunisia, I think, will come out on top. Equatorial Guinea second, Libya third, and then Botswana. So I agree with the rankings.
I thought you'd be loyal to Botswana and predicting another campaign like 2012.
I'm hoping, but I don't know if they can pull it off.
All right. Well, I agree with you on that prediction. I think, honestly, the only contentious one there is 3rd place, where possibly Botswana could overtake Libya. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I don't know the results, what's happened so far. I'm very excited to find out. But we're going to kind of predict game by game here. And the first one is that 3rd, 4th place battle between Libya and Botswana. But I think with Libya at home, there's little doubt about it. Maybe you can tell me if they actually are playing that game at home or whether it's in a different venue. But I'm going to say Libya 2-0, regardless of whether it's in Libya or in, say, Tunisia or Egypt.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have at my fingers as to where exactly the game was played.
Okay, maybe we can come back to that.
See. It is, yeah, it was in Libya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Libyan football stadium. There we go. Yeah. And so you predicted 2-0?
Yeah.
It was a win for Libya, but just 1-0.
1-0. All right. Well, your hopes of Botswana overthrowing things here are not looking good.
Yeah.
Tunisia and Equatorial Guinea. I'll make it quick. Equatorial Guinea always capable of a surprise, but I don't think they'll do so here. So 2-0 for Tunisia.
Tunisia did get the win, but it was actually a 4-0 win, so very convincing.
Yeah, good consistency, and Tunisia has been more consistent of late. So obviously that puts Tunisia on top after round one. And in round two, we have Botswana at home to Tunisia. Now, I mean, any sensible person would, and odds makers do give heavy odds on Tunisia for games like this, but they make a mistake because even small teams can pull off a tie in Africa. Botswana is very strong at home. So I'm almost tempted to predict a tie, but Tunisia have been very consistent. So I'm going to say 2-1 Tunisia with the possibility of a tie.
Well, you did talk about Botswana being Tunisia's bogey team, and it did indeed end in a tie at 0-0.
0-0. You know, if I was a betting man, it would be African soccer like this that I'd put their money on, because I've seen odds, like $18 for Botswana to get a point, and I think I would be rich if I did it. But I'm not a betting man. Great result for Botswana there. They continue to torment Tunisia. And Equatorial Guinea versus Libya is the next game. With Equatorial Guinea doing that badly in their first game, I wonder if they're looking a bit weaker here. I think there's a possibility of Libya pulling off a tie, but they've been too weak over the last while. So I'm going to say 2-0.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 2-0. And Equatorial Guinea did have the home field advantage.
Right. Yeah, that was really the deciding factor. I was really struggling to figure out whether Libya would get a goal, but they're not a big scoring team. Okay, so how are things looking after the first two sets, Kiera?
So nothing too unexpected. Tunisia is, of course, on top with 4 points. Equatorial Guinea and Libya tied with 3 points each. And then Botswana with a 1 point.
A 1 point, but a glorious point.
Yes.
Group K: Morocco, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Liberia. Part 3, where we begin by looking at the rankings. So we see Morocco is 22nd in FIFA and 24th in ELO, so fairly similar. South Africa, 69th in FIFA, that puts them about 50 points behind Morocco, and 70th in ELO, so both systems kind of seeing them around 70th. However, Liberia is different. FIFA has them at 149th, and ELO has them at 128th. There, I'm trying to decide which one I agree with more. But anyway, I think it doesn't matter because I think they're really outclassed in this group here. If we look at the FIFA and ELO rankings, we saw Morocco is 24th. They were all the way down to 77th in 2015, and actually for several years around that time, they were in the 70s. So they're definitely in a good period. They rose up kind of steadily from the 60s to the 50s to the 40s, and actually it's only in the last year that they've moved from 41st to 24th in ELO rankings. South Africa are 69th and 70th, as we saw. They were as high as 50th in June 2017 and as low as 82nd in 2008. But of course, their best period was around 2002 when they were in the 40s. And I'm using the more reliable ELO rankings. If we look at the FIFA rankings, they reached all the way up to 20th in December 2000. and were 30th in 2002 when ELO had them as 40th. So the FIFA rankings kind of a bit more volatile than the ELO rankings. Okay, finally, Liberia. FIFA has them all the way, breaking 100 all the way up to 98th in December 2013. I can't remember us saying anything particular that they did in 2013 that would merit that. And certainly in FIFA rank or ELO rankings, they were around 130th, as they always seem to be. That was up from around 140th in around 2006 to 2008. In 2002, interestingly, they rose all the way up to 87th in both ranking systems. That was their strong period. Let's look at the head-to-head rankings, and we see that Morocco and Liberia have only met twice. That was in 1982. We pointed it out in the description, where Morocco won 3-0 at home and then 5-0 away. So that's the only time they've met. So Morocco, 2 wins, 0 losses, 0 ties. South Africa and Morocco is the ones that have met the most in this group, and South Africa actually has the better head-to-head with 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. We'll talk a little bit about that later. South Africa versus Libya. Sorry, not Libya, Liberia. In 2002, they met. That was a strong year for both of them, actually. 2002 African Cup qualifying. South Africa won at home and tied away. However, Liberia won the group, but South Africa also advanced in second. And finally, no, that's it. Morocco and Liberia. We've already done Morocco with the better record there. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what we think is going to happen here. And actually, the grouping, especially with the disqualification of Zimbabwe, seems fairly set in stone to me, and it should finish according to the seeding. Morocco's consistency has been the key to success, especially in recent years, and that should easily see them through here. With Zimbabwe disqualified, really they only need to outperform Liberia to earn one of the top spots to get them to the cup. 2 spots available. That consistency will also probably see them finish ahead of South Africa, who are improving, in fact, but probably not enough to challenge Morocco, I would say. We saw that Morocco's ranked 50 points above them in the ranking systems, and they're more than 100 points ahead of Liberia. They do have that losing head-to-head with South Africa, but most of the points that South Africa earned there were during their strong years around the turn of the century. In their only recent meeting, we saw in the group stage in 2019, Morocco beat them. If South Africa's overall strength prevails, they should finish in second, with an outside chance of challenging Morocco for top spot. But if their luck continues to take the toll it has, they would have been leapfrogged by Zimbabwe here, who they were supposed to play in the last game. But maybe their luck has balanced out in making that impossible, Zimbabwe having been disqualified. So South Africa only has to outdo Liberia to reach this African Cup. However, they have been sideswiped by, or else they've legitimately struggled with teams of Liberia's level. But the consistency, if you take a close look, South Africa's consistency has been improving, and they should have no problem here, other than the gods of drama who seem to delight in toying with them. But the gods would have to side with them to take first place over Morocco here, although that's not out of the question either. It does seem out of the question, though, for Liberia. With Zimbabwe out, the challenge of overcoming another team seems pretty limited. Again, there's kind of an outside chance of maybe South Africa providing another comedy of errors or some bad luck. Some home points, though, do seem possible because they're tough at home, Liberia. But even in the best of their recent campaigns, it wasn't enough to make them a challenger at the campaign level. So here we have it. My prediction for me, Morocco first, South Africa, and Liberia with little chance of it finishing any other way. But I never want to be too overconfident, especially with Africa, because in a way it's my favorite region because the most unexpected things happen. Okay, well, we've finished the podcast with a prediction on the games to this point. So Zimbabwe was supposed to play Liberia, Zimbabwe at home there, but that's been cancelled. So we have actually a key game here, Morocco versus South Africa. Well, we've seen that Morocco is very, very tough at home. They kind of damaged their home record for a few years. I don't know if we mentioned this in the podcast, but they had a pristine home record. Malawi and Gabon managed to win there. Those were two of the only teams to win there. And then I think around 2014, around that time, they did lose a few games at home. But recently they've become very tough at home again. So I'm not going to call anything against them here. I'm going to say this is a 2-0 win over 2-1 win over South Africa with a mild chance of South Africa stealing a tie. Let's see what happened. Okay, this was a 2-1 win for Morocco. So South Africa got the first goal at 8 minutes in and held the lead for the first half, and then Morocco scored 51 minutes in, so 6 minutes after the second half began, and only won it on a goal at 88. So I must say that's the expected result, but a bit of a confidence-inspiring result for South Africa there. And I do think they are going to prove a bit better this time around. I guess we won't see it in qualifying that much, but in the cup. In the second game, South Africa was supposed to play at home to Zimbabwe. That's been cancelled. And we have Liberia playing at home to Morocco. Well, odds makers would heavily favour Morocco here, but honestly, African teams at home, it would be always dangerous to bet against them. I'm not going to say that Liberia is going to get anything out of this, but it wouldn't surprise me if this was a draw. But I think Morocco is pretty consistent. So I'm going to say 2-0 Morocco. Let's see. Oh, I'm dead on. Woohoo. Morocco scoreless first half, and they got both of the goals very quickly with a penalty at 56 by Faisal Fajr. I'm never sure how to say his name. And then a minute later, Youssef En-Nesyri scored a second goal. So a 2-0 win. So yeah, it looks like things are heading towards the result we predicted. Morocco has played two games and won them both. South Africa is in second and Liberia is in third, but both of them are winless. So the next game, South Africa hosting Liberia in September, will be quite telling. Group L: Senegal, Benin, Mozambique, Rwanda. So part 3 begins with a look at the rankings, and we see that Senegal is far out ahead. I'll do actually FIFA and ELO separately here because they're a bit different. FIFA has Senegal as the 18th strongest team in the world right now, whereas ELO has that at 36, so a pretty big difference there. And I'm inclined to go with ELO on that one, as well as Senegal are doing. They exited at the group stage of the World Cup last time out. So once African teams get to the World Cup, they usually end up looking weaker in terms of the world, although it is kind of exciting when they do well, like Senegal in 2002 passing the group stage. So, but I'd be inclined to agree more with FIFA here. Anyway, with ELO here. Anyway, FIFA has them as 18th, and Benin is therefore about 70 points behind, 65 points behind in the FIFA rankings. And Mozambique is about 20 points behind Benin, and Rwanda about 20 points behind Mozambique. And that looks a little different in the ELO rankings, where Benin is not 80 points behind Senegal, but about 60 points behind. And then Mozambique is much further behind Benin in ELO rankings. And in fact, Rwanda is ahead of Mozambique in ELO rankings. So a little later when we discuss it, we'll talk about which one we agree with. But there does seem to be a bit of disagreement about how far Mozambique is really behind Benin, and whether Mozambique or Rwanda is the stronger team right now. But maybe the head-to-head will shed some light here. So we begin with Senegal and Benin, and Senegal has 2 wins, 1 draw, and no losses. They met in 2002, which doesn't matter much, but they did meet in the 2019 quarterfinal, where Senegal won, as we saw when we talked about it. So Senegal with the winning record there. Actually, Benin did well to tie them in 2002 World Cup qualifying, because that was a very strong year for Senegal. Okay, next is Senegal and Mozambique. That's 4 wins for Senegal, 1 draw and 0 losses. So the only time they've tied was in 2008, and that was the last time they played. So it's not very relevant. Senegal did win 1 game 6-1 in 1994 World Cup qualifying. But even though it's kind of out of date, Senegal does seem much stronger than Mozambique, so it's a bit representative. Senegal have never met Rwanda in major competitions, so they don't have any record. Benin and Mozambique have met just once. It did come up in the review, 2010 African Cup group stage. Both of them reached the African Cup, if you recall, that year, and they tied 2-2. So that's their only meeting, so they have an equal record. Benin has a superior record over Rwanda, but it is just 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 tie. And their last meeting was in 2014 World Cup, where Benin bested them. Shortly before, in 2012 African Cup qualifying, they each won at home. So fairly even there, but Benin with the edge. And most relevant, perhaps, is Mozambique versus Rwanda, because their only 4 meetings have been recent in the 2017 and 2021 African Cup qualifying campaigns. But it really shows them to be even, both of them winning at home and losing away. So really not much space between them there. Okay, let's go on to talk a little bit about the teams and prognosticate on who we think is the strongest team. And overall, this looks like an easy win for Senegal. In fact, Benin seems a bit of a weak pot 2 team, although actually they came from the middle of pot 2. So by that accounting, not that weak, but I think they are a bit weak as a pot 2 team, and they don't look like they're going to challenge Senegal at the top. And in fact, I think they're more likely to be challenged themselves from below. Mozambique seem fairly even. Mozambique and Rwanda actually seem fairly even with Benin. So I think if Benin don't bring good form into this competition, it could spill into a three-way battle for second place, but we'll look a bit closer. I'm not going to talk much about Senegal because they seem clear winners here. They haven't been beaten by any team in the group. We saw they've never met Rwanda, but they have superior head-to-heads with Benin and Mozambique. Both Benin and Mozambique did tie them away in a game, which is a possibility here, especially if Senegal secures an advancing spot quickly. They tend to field a B team, and we saw that Eswatini got a tie out of them at the end of a recent campaign, but they were already through. So it's possible they'll drop a few points, but it would be a shock if Senegal didn't win the group. Benin, if you recall, was in good form. Well, a great 2019 African Cup campaign, and pretty good in 2022 World Cup qualifying. So that probably justifies their second place seeding here. But really, in their general history, they're a middling to weak team, not unlike the other two teams. And that was kind of evident in their 2021 African Cup campaign. So I see them a bit closer to the bottom two than they are to Senegal. Even in their best campaigns, they didn't threaten teams like Senegal. So perhaps at the game level, they can get a point at home. But we saw the FIFA rankings, they're 60 points behind Senegal. But more interestingly, ELO has them 40 points ahead of Mozambique. But in this case, I would agree with the FIFA rankings more, which has them 20 points ahead of Mozambique. So I do kind of favor them, but their form is better. But really, in their overall history, they're kind of equally strength with Mozambique and not much better than Rwanda. So in short, if they bring their 2019 form, they should be fine for second place, but otherwise it could be a fairly even battle. Let's take a look at Mozambique. They haven't shown much form coming into this cup. And over their whole history, they're generally a flat team. Even when they've reached the African Cup, it was really with just a slight improvement. So, they're a fairly steady team, but that steadiness is at a fairly low level. They haven't taken advantage of the expanded cup, 2024 Team African Cup. Their last qualification was in 2010. So they should be challenging to reach the cup, but they really haven't raised their level to that point. So I would even say that in their current form, it's more likely that they'll struggle with Rwanda than actually challenge Benin for second. But again, it kind of comes down to form. Finally, Rwanda, we saw that they were ranked above Mozambique in ELO rankings, and they also have an even head-to-head record. And those are fairly recent games. And Rwanda had a better 2021 African Cup qualifying campaign and actually finished ahead of Mozambique. They were grouped together. So it wasn't as good as Benin's 2019 form, of course, when they reached the quarterfinals. But they could challenge Benin if they raise their form a little bit. Which might actually come down to showing their sometimes good away form. And that's exactly what happened in 2012 when Rwanda finished ahead of Benin in that group. It was one of Rwanda's best years, though, so we can't expect the same here. But it does illustrate that a slight improvement could make a challenge possible. So I would say all in all, Senegal is way out in front, and it could be a three-way challenge for second, and that comes down to the form that each team brings in. Benin seems the most likely, having shown good form in recent campaigns, although it's not always guaranteed. But the historical form sees them as pretty even with Mozambique and Rwanda, and they could be embroiled in a battle. Rwanda have had better flashes of form than Mozambique, so to me seems slightly more likely to challenge. And Rwanda could take third over Mozambique. But both Mozambique and Rwanda would really only need a slight improvement in form to challenge for second, especially if Benin isn't at their best. So here it is, my prediction. Benin, I'm going to say Senegal's going to finish way ahead in first. I will give Benin second place, but I don't think it's kind of guaranteed. I'm going to put Rwanda, the top 4 team, as third, slightly better than Mozambique. I agree with the ELO rankings there. And overall, I kind of maybe more hope than prediction, but I see an exciting 3-way battle for second place. Second place is going to be an advancing spot, so it could be good. Okay, well, now we're going to see what has actually happened to this point. And in the first game, it is Zimbabwe. Oh my goodness, I have the wrong. Have the wrong graphic. Let me see. Do I have the right graphic here? No, I don't. So I'll have to kind of wing it here. Group L. But I'm going to make the predictions before I look. So, I have to look. Mozambique and Rwanda. Yeah, well, that's kind of a key game, isn't it? So I'm going to say I'm going to call Mozambique at home, but there are a couple of points in Rwanda's favor. They finished first over Mozambique they finished third ahead of Mozambique in a recent campaign. And Rwanda tends to be a little better on the road than most African teams, so could steal a point. However, in their 2 meetings so far, they didn't. And I would always favor the home team in Africa anyway. So I'm going to say 2-0 there to Mozambique. That would make the other game Senegal versus Benin. I think that's an easy win for Senegal. I think Senegal tends to be pretty businesslike at the beginning of campaigns, and they get their qualification kind of secured, and then they might drop some points, but they're pretty solid at the beginning. So I'm going to say 2-0 Senegal, possibly 3-0. So what did I say? 2-1 Mozambique. And, good result for Rwanda there. They did earn a draw. Rwanda scored at 65 and Mozambique scored immediately after at 67, but that was it. So great stuff for Rwanda. Yeah, again, a decent team on the road and looking a bit better than Mozambique. I think that gives them a leg up, even though it's just a tie. And Senegal versus Benin, well, it's a 3-1 win for Senegal. Sadio Mane scoring 3 goals in what seemed a pretty comfortable win. 2 of them were on penalties, and Benin got just a consolation goal at 88 there. Okay, so the next round is Rwanda versus Senegal. Senegal playing away there, and I think, yeah, Senegal are going to be consistent there. Again, Rwanda's not as good at home as some African teams, so 2-0 Senegal there for me, although I would be thrilled by Rwanda getting a tie there, which is not out of the question, but not likely. And then the other game is Benin versus Mozambique, and I would have to give Benin the edge, especially at home there. Mozambique did give up a tie to Rwanda in their first game, but I do think those teams are more even than the rankings or the seedings suggest. So I'm going to say that I wouldn't be surprised. I would be mildly surprised by a Mozambique draw, but I'm going to give the edge to Benin for sure. Okay, let us see. And Senegal did win over Rwanda, but it took a penalty at 90+8, so a desperate last-minute penalty. I think they won their first game of the African Cup over Zimbabwe that way too. It's kind of a pattern for Senegal. Sadio Mane starting the goal. Looking at the result, I kind of feel bad that Rwanda didn't get a tie there. Senegal's going to win anyway, so it doesn't matter much. Okay, and then the other game, this group is turning out to be exciting because it was Mozambique with a 1-0 win in Benin, so an away win there, the only goal coming at 38, and it was scored by Jenny Katamo. I don't know that player. So wow, this is turning out to be a very exciting group, as I kind of hoped. It's Senegal with 2 wins, so they look like they're going to take off way out ahead. But Mozambique have stepped into second place despite tying at home against Rwanda. Rwanda got a tie at home, and it's Benin kind of not showing the form that they would have needed to take second here, and so they'll definitely have to kind of pick up the pace. Losing in Senegal was pretty much expected, but losing at home to Mozambique is a bit of a blow. I think it'll be tough for them to take second now, but again, if they show that form that they are capable of, they could come back. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this 4th and final podcast of our quick series on African Cup 2023 qualifying, where we compiled the final discussions and predictions for each qualifying group. So if you want to look more deeply into the teams, you can check out the full podcast on all 12 groups. That's on our website at soccerfiles.captivate.fm. Or that's Soccer Files with a PH and a PH in the middle and an S at the end, or just type Soccer Files Canada into Google and we will come up. And stay tuned for our next series beginning soon as we overview the groups participating in the World Cup in November. After that group series, we'll be previewing the players of each team in the tournament. We'll go team by team for that one. But for now, that's all from Soccer Files Canada. Hope to have your ears again soon.